"Pack your bags, Mom. I sold your apartment." My own son's words cut through my heart like a blade. 30 years of memories, of sacrifices, of unconditional love, all ripped away from me by the person I loved most in the world. In that instant, I felt the ground collapse. Hello, my name is Margaret Collins, and for 35 years I've built a life of love and dedication in Boston. I know it seems hard to believe, but yes, my son kicked me out of the house, the same boy I raised with so much love and affection. Life has never been easy. When my beloved husband passed away 15 years ago, I found myself alone with Daniel, then a 16-year-old teenager. I vividly remember those frigid winter mornings in Boston when the alarm clock would go off at 5 a.m. While Daniel was still asleep in his warm bed, I was already up, making his favorite breakfast, pancakes with maple syrup, just the way he liked them. Then I'd rush to catch 2 buses to my job as a secretary downtown, but that was just the beginning of my day. At 5 p.m., when most people were heading home to rest, I'd head to my second job as a cleaner in an office building, working until 11 p.m. I'd come home exhausted, my hands bruised from cleaning products, but I always found the strength to ask Daniel about his day at school. The answer was always the same, a disinterested mumble or a simple, "It was normal," without even looking up from the video game I'd bought him the month before, cutting back on my own diet. I remember one particular morning. Daniel was 17 and getting ready for school. He stomped down the stairs with that sullen expression I knew so well. "Mom, all my friends have new Nike sneakers. Why do I have to wear these ridiculous old ones?" he complained, pointing dismissively at the sneakers I had bought on sale the month before. "Son, I'm doing my best. I'll buy you a new pair next week, okay?" "I promise," I replied, already mentally calculating how I could cut my personal expenses even further. "You always say that, Mom. It's embarrassing to go to school like this." "My friends will think we're poor," he retorted, slamming the door behind him. At that moment, I sat on the kitchen chair and cried silently. Poor? Maybe we were, but I'd move mountains so he'd never want for anything. That same afternoon, I went to the shoe store and bought the sneakers he wanted, using my credit card, which was already maxed out. Daniel didn't even say thank you when he received the gift. The years passed, and the situation only got worse. When Daniel was a senior in high school, I worked 3 jobs to pay for his college tuition. Besides secretarial work and cleaning, I also cared for an elderly lady on the weekends. My back ached constantly, my feet were always swollen, but I smiled when I came home and saw Daniel studying. "Mom, I need a new laptop for college. The one at school doesn't work properly," he told me one Sunday afternoon, as I was preparing lunch after spending the morning taking care of Donna Elena. "How much does it cost, son?" I asked, even though I already knew it would be expensive. "About $2,000. It's an investment in my future," he replied, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. $2,000 represented 2 months of my cleaning salary, but as always, I found a way. I sold the jewelry my late husband had given me, my engagement ring, the pearl earrings inherited from my mother, everything. Daniel never knew the sacrifice I'd made. When I handed him the laptop, I received only a muttered, "Thank you," without even looking up from the screen. The worst moment was during his college graduation. I was so proud, sitting in that huge auditorium, watching my son receive the diploma I had paid for with so much sweat and tears. After the ceremony, while other families celebrated at expensive restaurants, I took Daniel out to dinner at our favorite restaurant, a small Italian pizzeria we'd always eaten at since he was a child. "I can finally get out of this mediocre life," he said, looking around the restaurant with disdain. "Now that I have my degree, I can build something better for myself." Those words cut through my heart like a sharp blade. A mediocre life. Was this how he saw all our years together? All the sacrifices I made, all the nights I lay awake worrying about his future, was all that mediocrity to him? A few months later, Daniel landed his first job at an accounting firm. I was so happy that I prepared a special dinner to celebrate, his favorite dish since childhood, beef stroganoff with rice and shoestring potatoes. I set the table with the best china, lit candles, and transformed our simple dining room into something special. When he got home from work, he looked at his desk and sighed. "Mom, don't tell anyone at the office about your cleaning job. It's embarrassing," he said, sitting down at the desk without even acknowledging the effort I had put in. "Awkward?" I repeated, feeling my chest tighten. "It's just that the guys at work are on another level, you know. They talk about investments, trips to Europe, that kind of thing. If they knew my mom was a cleaner—" He left the sentence hanging, but the meaning was clear. That night, after Daniel went upstairs, I sat in the kitchen and looked at my calloused hands, scarred from years of hard work. Those same hands that had rocked him as a baby, that had prepared thousands of meals for him, that had worked tirelessly to give him a better future, were now a source of shame. That was how our relationship had become. I gave unconditional love, worked myself to exhaustion, sacrificed my own happiness and well-being, and Daniel reciprocated with shame, ingratitude, and coldness. But I continued to love him because he was my son, my only son, and a mother never stops loving, no matter how much it hurts. But when I thought it couldn't get any worse, a girl entered his life. Daniel met Claire at a company party in late 2022. I clearly remember the first time he mentioned her name. His eyes sparkled in a way I hadn't seen in years. He came home that Friday with a distinctive, almost childlike smile, as if he'd discovered a treasure. "Mom, I met someone very special today," he said, sitting down at the kitchen table where I was making dinner. It was rare for him to sit down and talk to me these days. "Really, son? Tell me," I replied, feeling a twinge of hope. Maybe this person could bring back the caring Daniel I once knew. "Her name is Claire. She works in the company's marketing department. She's unlike any woman I've ever met," he said, and for the first time in a long time, I saw genuine happiness on his face. Over the next few weeks, Daniel couldn't stop talking about Claire. She had an MBA from Harvard, spoke fluent English, French, and Spanish, had traveled throughout Europe, and came from a traditional Connecticut family. Each new piece of information he shared made me realize how small I was in comparison. "Claire knows amazing restaurants in town. Mom, places I never even knew existed," he said, forgetting that our favorite Italian pizzeria used to be the most special place in the world to him. She has a beautiful apartment in Back Bay, decorated by a professional designer," he continued, looking around our modest living room as if seeing it with new eyes. After 2 months of dating, Daniel finally decided to bring her home for dinner. I spent the entire week preparing. I bought special ingredients, cleaned the house from top to bottom, and even bought fresh flowers to decorate the table, something I rarely did due to our tight budget. I chose to make my best dish, grilled salmon with asparagus and mushroom risotto, a recipe I'd learned from watching cooking shows. I wanted to impress my son's girlfriend, to show her that I, too, could create something sophisticated. When they arrived that Saturday night, I was shocked by Claire's appearance. She was exactly as Daniel had described. Tall, elegant, wearing a camel wool coat that probably cost more than my month's salary. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless, and she carried a designer bag I'd only seen in magazines. "Mom, this is Claire, my mom, Margaret." Daniel made the introductions, and I couldn't help but notice how nervous he looked. "Nice to meet you, Margaret," Claire said, extending a chilled hand and shaking mine only briefly. Her smile was polite, but her eyes scanned me up and down, as if she were sizing up an object in a thrift store. Throughout dinner, I felt the weight of her judging gaze, the way she took in our simple table, our worn chairs, the faded dining room curtains. Everything that felt like home to me felt inadequate to her. "The house is cozy," she commented, looking around with a forced smile. I knew cozy was a polite euphemism for small and old-fashioned. When I served the main course, which I had prepared with such care, Claire poked the salmon delicately, as if unsure of its quality. "Do you cook often, Margaret?" she asked, her tone suggesting surprise, as if cooking at home were something primitive. "Yes, I've always enjoyed cooking for Daniel," I replied proudly. "Ever since he was little, he's loved my home-cooked food." It was then that I heard the whisper that would change everything. As I got up to get more water, Claire leaned discreetly toward Daniel and murmured softly, but not softly enough, "Honey, maybe your mom needs some help, modernizing herself a bit." I felt my heart skip a beat. I pretended not to hear and continued serving, but those words echoed in my head for the rest of the night. Daniel just smiled awkwardly and changed the subject, talking about work. Modernizing. What did that mean? Was my dress inappropriate? Was my house too old-fashioned? Was I not sophisticated enough for the family Daniel wanted to build? The rest of dinner passed in a haze of discomfort. Claire talked about her travels through Tuscany, her wine-tasting classes, the social events she attended. Every word out of her mouth made me feel smaller, simpler, more out of place in my own son's world. "Margaret, have you ever traveled abroad?" she asked at one point, with a smile that seemed genuinely curious but hid a subtle condescension. "No, I never had the opportunity," I answered honestly. How could I have traveled? Every penny I earned was invested in Daniel's future. Oh, what a shame. "Traveling is so enriching for the soul, don't you think?" she continued, exchanging a quick glance with Daniel. When they left, Daniel gave me a quick kiss on the cheek, something he hadn't done in months, and said, "Thanks for dinner, Mom. Claire really enjoyed it." But I knew it wasn't true. I'd seen it in his judgmental eyes, heard the whisper, felt the weight of his disdain disguised as politeness. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of dinner. I began to see my home, my life, myself through Claire's eyes. Did I really need to modernize? Could it be that after all these years of sacrificing everything for Daniel, I wasn't good enough to be part of his new world? Daniel decides to rent a house and live with Claire. 3 months after that disastrous dinner, Daniel came to give me the news I'd dreaded, but in a way had already expected. It was a Sunday afternoon, and I was watering the plants in the garden when I saw him pull up in the driveway. He hadn't come to visit me unannounced in weeks. "Mom, I need to tell you something," he said, standing in the kitchen doorway, without even sitting down. "Sure, son. Want some coffee?" "I just made some," I offered, hoping he'd accept and stay a while to talk. "No, I can't stay long. It's just, Claire and I decided to move in together. We're renting a house in Cambridge." He dropped the bombshell all at once, as if ripping off a Band-Aid. I felt the ground shift beneath my feet. I knew this moment was coming, but hearing the words come out of his mouth was like a punch to the gut. "That's great, son. Are you happy?" I managed, forcing a smile. What else could I do? Beg him not to go? Cry? Make a fuss? None of that would bring him back. "Yes, I'm very happy. Claire found a beautiful house with 2 bedrooms, a garden, close to her work. It's a new beginning for us," he said with an excitement he hadn't shown when talking to me in a long time. And so, Daniel left home. I helped him pack his things, pretended to be happy for him, and gave him advice on how to take care of the new house. Inside, I was falling apart. My boy, whom I had raised with so much love, was flying away from me. For the first few months, Daniel still visited me regularly, at least once a week. But I soon noticed that these visits were becoming more spaced out and shorter. And Claire always had an excuse ready. "Margaret, we'd love to have dinner with you, but we have an important event at the club," she'd say in that sweet but fake voice when I called trying to set up a date. "Daniel's really busy with work. You know what I mean? Tax season is tough," was another common excuse, even when it wasn't filing season. "What a shame you can't come today, Margaret. We're having dinner with Claire's parents. Maybe next time." And there was never a next time. Phone calls have also changed dramatically. Before, Daniel and I would talk for hours about everything, his work, his plans, his worries. Now, when I called, he always seemed in a rush. "Hi, Mom. How are you? I'm kind of busy here." That's how our conversations would start. "Son, I just wanted to know how you are. We haven't talked in a week. I tried to make conversation. Oh, it's okay. I'm very busy at work. You know how it is. Claire has been helping me a lot with organizing the house. Claire is always in the middle of the conversation. That's great, son. How about we have dinner together on Saturday? I can make that favorite dish of yours, I suggested, already knowing what the answer would be. Oh, Mom, that's not going to work. Claire has already organized something with her friends, but I promise we'll see each other next week, okay? And he would quickly hang up, leaving me with the phone in my hand and a heavy heart. I felt like I was gradually losing my son, like sand slipping through my fingers. Each conversation grew colder, each visit briefer, each excuse more elaborate. But I didn't know how to win him back, how to compete with the glamorous world Claire offered. I tried to approach him in different ways. I bought books on investing so I could talk about his work. I started watching cooking shows to learn more sophisticated recipes. I even considered taking an English course, remembering Daniel's suggestion months earlier. But nothing worked. Daniel was distancing himself, and I felt increasingly invisible in his life. It was then that something happened that, at the time, seemed normal to me, but which I now realize was the beginning of their plan. One Thursday afternoon, Daniel showed up at my house unannounced. He hadn't visited me in person in almost a month, so I was thrilled to see him. "What a nice surprise, son. Come in, want to have lunch?" "I can make you a sandwich in a hurry," I said, already heading to the kitchen. "Actually, Mom, I can't stay long. I came here for practical reasons," he said, and something in his tone made me alert. "What practical matter?" I asked, stopping moving. "It's about the house's documentation. Where do you keep the apartment's papers?" he asked casually, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. I was a little confused. Why did he want to know about this? "Why, Daniel? Did something happen?" I asked, feeling a pang of worry. "It's nothing, Mom. It's just that since I'm an accountant and your son, I thought it would be a good idea for me to take a look at your documents, make sure everything is in order, that there are no outstanding taxes, that kind of thing. It's my way of taking care of you," he explained with a smile that seemed genuine. Taking care of me. He'd barely called me for months, but now he wanted to take care of me by checking the house's documents. I should have suspected, but a mother's love blinded me. I was even moved to think he was finally showing concern for me. "What a thoughtful son you are," I exclaimed, feeling my heart warm. "The papers are all in your father's office drawer. You know where that is. Can I take some home to review?" "Claire also knows a bit about legal documentation. She can help me review everything," he suggested. Claire. Of course she would be involved. But at the time, it just seemed like another sign that she was integrating into our family, helping Daniel take care of me. "Of course you can, son. Take whatever you need." I agreed without hesitation and followed him to the office. Daniel grabbed several documents, the house deed, payment receipts, and some certificates. He organized everything in a folder he'd brought with him. "I'll take my time and get back to you next week, okay?" he said, giving me a kiss on the cheek, the first one in weeks. "Okay, son. Thanks for taking care of this for me," I replied, truly grateful. He left that afternoon, and I felt good, thinking that Daniel was finally starting to care about me again. How wrong I was. 2 weeks passed, then 3, and Daniel didn't bring the documents back. When I called to inquire, he always said he was still reviewing them, that he'd found some issues that needed to be addressed, and that he'd get everything organized soon. I was already getting worried about the documentation. It had been 2 months since Daniel had brought the house papers, and every time I asked about them, I received vague answers and postponements. My anxiety grew with each passing day. After all, they were important documents. The deed to my house, proof of payment, certificates. How could he be taking so long to review them? "Daniel, son, when are you going to bring my documents back?" I asked the few times I managed to get him on the phone. "Soon, Mom. I'm still sorting out some pending issues I found. You don't need to worry about that." It was always the same evasive answer. "Ooh, what kind of pending matters?" I persisted, but he always quickly changed the subject. "Look, Mom, I have to go. I'm at work. We'll talk later. The weeks dragged on, and I began to feel a strange sensation in my chest. Something wasn't right. My maternal instinct, which had so often warned me when Daniel was up to something as a teenager, began to sound alarms. But I pushed those thoughts away, trying to trust my son. It was a Tuesday morning, August 15th, that my life changed forever. I remember the date precisely because it was the day my world fell apart. It was around 9 a.m. I was in the kitchen, drinking coffee and reading the local paper, when I heard the key turn in the front door lock. My heart leapt with joy. Daniel still had the house keys, and he hadn't visited me in weeks. "Daniel, what a nice surprise, son!" I shouted from the kitchen, already getting up to greet him. But when I saw him standing in the kitchen doorway, I knew immediately something was very wrong. His expression was cold, distant, as if he were looking at a stranger. There was no warmth in his eyes, no smile I always expected to see. It was as if a stranger had entered my home wearing my son's face. "Mom, sit down," he said in a dry, formal tone. "I need to talk to you." "Sure, son. Want some coffee?" "I just made some—" I began to offer, trying to break the tension I felt in the air. "No," he cut me off abruptly. "Just sit down and listen to me." I sat in the chair, my hands shaking slightly. Daniel remained standing, as if he were about to give a work presentation, not talk to his mother. He took a deep breath, as if preparing for a dive, and then he let out the words that still echo in my head like the sound of a hammer hitting a coffin. "Pack your bags, Mom. I sold your apartment." The world stopped, literally stopped. The clock on the wall seemed to have stopped ticking. The birds outside stopped singing. Even my breathing stopped for a moment. Those words echoed through the air like thunder on a sunny day, devastating and unexpected. What did you say?" I whispered, thinking I had misheard, that my ears were playing tricks on me. "I sold the house, Mom. That's what the paperwork I brought 2 months ago was for." "The process is practically finished," he repeated with the same coldness, as if he were telling me about the weather. Daniel stood there, in my kitchen doorway, with an expression I'd never seen before. It was cold, calculating, almost cruel. My heart stopped for a moment, then began pounding so hard I thought it would burst out of my chest. "What do you mean, Daniel? This is my home," I managed to stammer, feeling the world spin around me. The kitchen walls seemed to be closing in on me. "Mom, you don't need this big place anymore. It's too much work for someone your age to maintain it all," he said, gesturing vaguely around the kitchen where we had shared thousands of meals. "Big place? Daniel, it's our house. It's where you grew up, where your father—" I started to protest, but he interrupted me again. "I found you a little room in a very nice nursing home, Sunset Residence Gardens. Claire did a lot of research. It's one of the best in the area," he continued, as if he were doing me a favor. "Claire. Of course she was behind this. Claire thought it would be better this way. Someone to take care of you, scheduled activities, other people your age. It will be much better than being alone here." The coldness in his voice shattered my heart into 1,000 pieces. Every word that came out of his mouth was like a stab. 30 years of memories. The place where I raised my son with so much love, where I mourned my husband, where we celebrated birthdays, Christmases, graduations, all being discarded like old trash. "Daniel, how could you do this to me?" I asked, and for the first time in a long time, I saw a flicker of hesitation in his eyes. But it only lasted a second. "I'm doing what's best for you, Mom. Claire helped me understand that sometimes we have to make difficult decisions for our loved ones. Claire again. Always Claire. You have no right to sell my house. I didn't authorize this," I shouted, rising from my chair, feeling anger mixed with despair. "Actually, I do. As his only son and direct heir, and considering his advanced age, I obtained legal power of attorney. Everything was done within the law," he replied with a coldness that chilled my blood. "What power of attorney? What power of attorney? I've never signed any power of attorney," I protested, completely lost. The documents you signed a few months ago, remember? When I said it was to organize your finances. My mind raced, trying to remember documents. When? And then I remembered. A few months ago, Daniel had shown up with some paperwork saying it was to help me with banking matters. I'd signed it trusting him without reading it properly. How could I have been so naive? You tricked me, I murmured, feeling the tears start to stream down my face. I protected you, Mom. You don't understand legal and financial matters. Claire explained to me how these things work. And the money. Where does the money from the sale go? I asked, already knowing the answer. It'll go toward your nursing home care. And, well, some of it will help me pay off the house Claire and I are buying. There was the stark truth. They wanted my apartment to finance their lives. I, who had sacrificed everything for this boy, was now being discarded like an old piece of furniture no longer needed. When? I asked in a whisper. The move? Next week. I've already packed some boxes in my car for you to start packing your personal things. Just the essentials, because the room at the nursing home is small. Only the essentials. 30 years of life reduced to the essentials. Daniel, why? Why are you doing this to me? I asked, my voice breaking. He looked down at me, his gaze hard and cold, unlike anything I'd ever seen. Because it's fair, Mom. It's payback for the miserable life you made me live, for all the embarrassment and shame I endured having a poor mother. Claire helped me see that. Poverty is no longer my routine. The words cut through my soul. I pressed my hands against the table to keep from collapsing. Shame. I worked my whole life so you wouldn't feel ashamed. I took food from my mouth to buy your books, your shoes, your college education. He shook his head dismissively, already turning to leave. I won't argue, Mother. It's decided. Get ready. The door slammed shut as he left. I was left alone in the kitchen, staring at walls that no longer felt like mine. The clock ticked again, the hands moving, but inside me, time had stopped. I realized, finally, that this was no longer my son. It was a stranger carrying his face. As soon as Daniel slammed the door, I stood there in the living room, speechless. His words still echoed inside me like a cruel punishment. 3 days. I'll trade for a miserable life. My own son, to whom I dedicated every second of my life, had just condemned me to exile. I spent the night in tears, unable to close my eyes. I sat on the couch, hugging a blanket, trying to warm a body that no longer felt warm. Between sobs, I asked myself dozens of times, where did I go wrong? What did I do so wrong to be treated this way by my only son? Did I love him too much? Had I, by protecting him from everything, made him incapable of gratitude? The hours dragged by. The ticking of the clock seemed to mock my pain. As dawn gave way to day, I was exhausted, my face swollen and my heart crushed. I tried to get up, but a deep ache coming from my soul paralyzed me. I walked to the bedroom with heavy steps. On the dresser sat a photo of my beloved husband, taken so many years ago when we still had dreams to fulfill. I held the frame with trembling hands and leaned my forehead against the cool glass. My love, if you were here, none of this would have happened. Where did I fail our boy? Were all my efforts, all my love, never enough? Tell me, what should I do now? I don't know if I can fight alone. The tears began to flow again, but this time something different happened. As I closed my eyes, I could almost feel his presence beside me, as if he were still there, silently giving me strength. It was at that moment that a name came to mind clearly. Mr. Wilson. He had been my husband's lawyer and trusted friend for over 30 years, always faithful, always upright. If anyone could help me face this injustice, it was he. I clutched the picture frame to my chest and whispered in my mind, I'm not giving up on our home. I'm going to find Mr. Wilson. You taught me never to bow my head, and now I'm going to honor that. In that moment, between the pain and the memory, A fragile flame of hope was rekindled within me. The next morning, I woke with heavy eyes, as if I'd cried for a lifetime. The pain in my chest still throbbed, but within me I had already made a decision. I wouldn't accept this silently. I grabbed my bag and a simple coat, and before leaving, I took one last look at every corner of the house. The faded curtains I'd sewn with my own hands, the kitchen table where Daniel did his math homework when he was little, the sofa where I'd so often fallen asleep after work. This was still my home, and I wouldn't let it be ripped away like old trash. On the sidewalk, the cold Boston wind made me shiver. Each step felt heavier than the last. I took the bus downtown, and along the way, I saw through the window the streets I'd walked so often to work, streets that had sustained my struggle to raise Daniel. Now, that same path led me to fight against him. Descending, I walked to the red brick building where Mr. Wilson's office was located. My hands were sweating, my legs were shaking, but my heart was steady. I climbed the narrow stairs, feeling the creak of the wood with each step, until I reached the door with the gold sign, Wilson and Associates, Law Firm. I took a deep breath before knocking. Soon I heard the familiar, deep voice, "Please come in." When I pushed open the door, I saw Mr. Wilson behind the desk, covered in law books and neatly organized stacks of papers. His hair was already completely white, but his eyes remained as steady as when he'd helped my husband register the deed to the house. "Margaret," he said, standing up in surprise. "You look pale. What happened?" I sat down, my hands still shaking. I told her everything, how Daniel had taken the documents, how Claire had influenced him, the cruel revelation that they had sold the house, the imposition of me to be sent to a nursing home. My voice cracked in places, but I didn't omit anything. Mr. Wilson listened to me in silence, his arms crossed, his brow furrowed. When I finished, he slammed his palm down hard on the table. "This is unbelievable. Margaret, her son, and this woman committed a very serious fraud. False power of attorney, misuse of documents, attempted disposal of assets without your consent. They didn't just betray your trust, they committed crimes." I swallowed, tears welling up in my eyes. "But is there still something I can do?" They said everything was already taken care of. He took a deep breath and opened one of the drawers, pulling out an old envelope. "Do you remember, Margaret, when your husband passed away? I told you that, for security reasons, any transaction involving your house would only be valid with my signature. You accepted, and we notarized it. Well then, no sale made by Daniel is valid. None." I stood still, as if a ton of weight had been lifted from my shoulders. "So, is this still my home?" "Yours and yours alone," he replied with conviction. "Margaret, remain calm. They're the ones in trouble now. We'll prepare immediate action, and this farce will be completely useless." In that moment, I felt the world spin again. The same son who wanted me out of the house in 3 days would now be confronted by the law. And, for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel alone. That same afternoon, Mr. Wilson acted with the agility of a man who knew exactly what was at stake. He drafted a robust petition, enclosed copies of the notarized safeguard, and, later that evening, filed a lawsuit requesting the immediate nullification of the fraudulent sale. His firm voice echoed in my head. "Margaret, you're not alone. They messed with the wrong person. The judge will hear this case tomorrow, and I've already requested priority. This battle is just beginning, and we have the law on our side." Sleeping was still difficult, but different from the night before. There weren't just tears, there was also hope. The next morning, I was sitting in the living room chair sipping a hot coffee when I heard the doorbell ring insistently. Through the crack in the window, I saw Daniel's car parked out front. Claire stood beside him, impeccably groomed, her arms crossed and an impatient expression. The door opened abruptly. "Well," Daniel said, his voice cold, "I hope your bags are packed. I came to pick you up, as we agreed." I looked at them calmly. My heart ached, but my face remained serene. "No, Daniel, I'm not going anywhere. Claire stepped forward, her eyes flashing with anger. Don't play dumb, Margaret. This apartment is mine now. You should be thankful we thought of a comfortable place for you to rot in peace, surrounded by old men like you. The words cut deep, but I didn't let my voice waver. Is that how you see me? As a nuisance? Daniel lifted his chin, agreeing with his girlfriend. You never understood, Mom. I spent my life ashamed, living in this miserable house, being the son of a cleaning lady. Now I have a different life. And you'll adapt, whether you like it or not. My heart was breaking, but I took a deep breath. I calmly spread a folder of documents on the living room table. I've sought my rights. Just yesterday, Mr. Wilson filed a lawsuit against you. The hearing has already been scheduled, and everything will be decided by the courts. For a moment, silence filled the room. Claire was the first to react, snatching the papers from my hand. You've got to be crazy. The sale's already been made. There's nothing an old woman like you can do. This apartment is mine, period. Daniel reinforced, his tone becoming increasingly aggressive. You're deluding yourself, Mom. You're not going to win anything. This house isn't yours anymore. Accept it now, because fighting will only make things worse. I stared at them, feeling the tears sting, but I stood my ground. Perhaps you've underestimated not only the law, but also the strength of a mother who won't be discarded like trash. They became furious, exchanged tense glances, and left, slamming the door violently, leaving the house shaking. I remained there, alone, but strangely at peace. For the first time, I wasn't the helpless victim. I was a woman ready to fight. The courtroom was packed on that chilly Boston morning. The air smelled of freshly brewed coffee mixed with tension. My footsteps echoed across the marble floor as I walked beside Mr. Wilson. My heart was pounding, but I struggled to maintain my posture. When I entered the courtroom, I saw Daniel and Claire sitting together, hand in hand. She had that same air of superiority, her chin held high as if she'd already won. Daniel avoided my gaze. The judge, a gray-haired man with a stern expression, adjusted his glasses and called for silence. We now open the hearing in the case of Collins vs. Collins et al. This case involves a dispute over the sale of a property located in Boston. My stomach churned, but Mr. Wilson was already on his feet, ready. His firm voice filled the room. Your Honor, we are dealing with a crime against an elderly woman, the victim of fraud and abuse of trust by her own son and Ms. Claire, who posed as the legitimate buyer. Today, we will prove that the entire transaction is void. Daniel's lawyer then stood up, straightening his tie. With all due respect, Your Honor, the property was acquired legally. Ms. Margaret signed the necessary documents, and my client simply exercised his right as a legitimate heir. The judge frowned. We'll see the evidence. Continue. My heart sank with each word. Then Daniel asked to speak. Your Honor, my mother never understood anything about finances. I only wanted the best for her. Claire and I thought about a home suitable for her age. The apartment. He took a deep breath, was too big for her, and I made the right decision. The words cut like knives. I wanted to scream, but I held back. It was Claire who next took the floor. Your Honor, I purchased the apartment in good faith. There is no illegality, Mrs. Margaret should be grateful for the opportunity to live in a safe and dignified place. The courtroom murmured, and the judge banged his gavel for order. I felt tears welling up, but I clung to Mr. Wilson's firmness. He glanced at me sideways and whispered, Trust me, Margaret. This is it. He then lifted a blue folder and walked to the front. Your Honor, the defense talks about legality, but forgets a crucial detail. Over 15 years ago, when Mrs. Margaret's late husband was still alive, we signed a safeguard clause that was notarized. The judge raised his eyebrows. Please explain. Mr. Wilson opened the document, the sound of the paper echoing in the silent room. Under this agreement, any transaction involving the Collins family estate may only be completed with two mandatory signatures, Margaret Collins and mine, as trusted attorney and special trustee appointed by her husband. Without these two signatures, Your Honor, any sale is automatically null and void. A murmur filled the room. Daniel's eyes widened, Claire's face paled. Their lawyer tried to intervene. Objection, Your Honor, this document cannot. The judge raised his hand, silencing him. He took the contract from Mr. Wilson, read it carefully, and shook his head. Notarized document, duly signed, officially registered. It is indisputable. Claire stood up abruptly. This is absurd! This is my apartment! I paid for it! Silence in the courtroom, the judge shouted, banging his gavel. Daniel, his face red, murmured in a low tone, but everyone heard, Mom, how could you? I took a deep breath, held back my tears, and calmly replied, Don't underestimate a mother. I fought my whole life for my son. Did you think I wouldn't have the strength to fight for my home? The judge spoke again, firmly and solemnly. I declare the sale null and void. The apartment remains in the name of Mrs. Margaret Collins. Furthermore, given the abuse committed and the proven emotional harm, I order Mr. Daniel Collins and Mrs. Claire to pay substantial compensation. The sound of the hammer echoed like music to my ears. I felt my chest lighten, as if I could truly breathe for the first time in months. I looked at Daniel. He couldn't meet my gaze. He hung his head in defeat, his shoulders slumped. Claire tugged at his arm, furious, but there was nothing else to do. I stood up, my voice firm, and simply said, Never underestimate a mother. Returning home that day was like crossing a bridge between two worlds. When I pushed open the door to the apartment, the same one Daniel had tried to tear from me, I smelled a familiar scent, a mix of antique wood and coffee, as if the walls were welcoming me back after a long exile. Every detail seemed to have a new life. The faded curtains were no longer a sign of poverty, but of resilience. The kitchen table was no longer just an old piece of furniture, but an altar of memories. I walked slowly through the rooms, running my hands over the walls and furniture like someone reuniting with an old friend. The silence in the house was no longer heavy. It was a peaceful silence. I remember sitting in the living room chair and for the first time in a long time, letting the tears flow, not from sadness, but from relief. I had fought against ingratitude, against manipulation, against injustice, and won. In the following days, life seemed to resume a new rhythm. Neighbors, who had shared some of my grief, began visiting, bringing cakes, flowers, and words of encouragement. They all said the same thing. You were brave, Margaret. Justice has been served. I smiled, but inside me there was still an open wound. After all, no justice can erase the pain of being betrayed by one's own son. Not long after, I heard rumors that Daniel and Claire had separated. I wasn't surprised. Relationships built on selfishness and ambition rarely stand the test of time. Claire disappeared from my life as quickly as she entered, like a shadow finally dissipating. But Daniel didn't disappear. He came back. First, with short, hesitant calls. Hi, Mom. I just wanted to see if you were okay. Then came brief visits, filled with silence. He would sit on the edge of the sofa, fidgeting with his hands, but unable to find the right words. At times, I saw in his eyes the same boy I once held in my lap. But soon, the memory of the cold man who tried to destroy me would surface, and my heart would be torn between pain and love. Trust, I knew, was broken. It's like a crystal vase. You can glue the pieces back together, but the scars never disappear. Yet, when I saw him before me, head down, trying to find a way back, I felt maternal love pulse within me, uncontrollable. Daniel, I told him once, when courage visited me, you destroyed something I never imagined could be broken between us. But even so, I remain your mother. And a mother never stops loving. He cried that day, and I cried too. Not because trust was restored, it wasn't yet, but because I realized that, despite everything, the invisible thread between mother and son hadn't completely broken. Today, When I walk around my house, I feel stronger and wiser. I've learned that love doesn't mean silently accepting everything, but it also doesn't mean ceasing to feel. I carry the scars of pain in my chest, but also the certainty that I survived the worst. Daniel is still trying, little by little, to rebuild his relationship with me. And maybe one day, with time, he'll succeed. But until then, I keep living. Because I, Margaret Collins, have learned that I can be hurt, I can be betrayed, but I will never stop loving. And this, perhaps, is the greatest strength a mother can carry.